partaker for brothers. And finally, two final libations. We pour to those who make it possible for us to do what we do. We pour to these rangers who stand guardian over this sacred space. We pour to these Africans and these folks who have come from Howard University, the staff, the faculty, the administrators who brought us here today to bear witness. This is not a libation, but an affirmation, because their hearts still beat, their tongues still speak, their minds still think, and their minds still wish the best for us. We pour for all of those people who surrounded us on this journey today and made it possible for us to be here. We pour this affirmation of thanks, Ashe. And finally, we pour to your children's children's children who will one day stand on this space and speak your name. Ashe.
That's taking me out of the wilderness. Yes, we lead me to that land of love. Ooh, yeah. I was down in the valley for a very long time until nothing come and take me over. Nothing, yes, nothing come and take me over. He reads the Bible to me, yeah. He said that he will guide me through the night and day. He reads the Bible to me, yeah. From Genesis to Revelation. That is straight that's taking me out of the wilderness. Yes, he lead me to the land of love. Ooh, yeah. I was down in the valley for a very long time until nothing come and take me over. Nothing, yes, nothing come and take me over. He reads the Bible to me, yeah. He said that he will guide me through the night and day. He reads the Bible to me, yeah. From Genesis to Revelation, I say, I was down in deep distress. Yes, I couldn't get no peace of rest until nothing come and take me over. Nothing, yes, nothing come and take me over. He reads the Bible to me, yeah. He said that he will guide me through the night and day. He reads the Bible to me, yeah. From Genesis to Revelation, I say, I was down in foolishness. I was like a bird without a nest until nothing come and take me over. Nothing, yes, nothing come and take me over. He reads the Bible to me, yeah. He said that he will guide me through the night and day. He reads the Bible to me, yeah. From Genesis to Revelation, I say.
Who feels it knows it. It's the ancestral rock. And when you know, you got to show it, you know. As we say in the street culture, we show and prove.
Down in the valley for a very long time until nothing come and take me over. Nothing, yes, nothing come and take me over.
Reaching out to head rocker, Abashaka. Yeah. Ras Gabriel. Ancestor. Bongo ISF. And to all who it may concern, you know. We know about the village life personally, intimately. Reaching out to our youth and youth who love the truth.
Yeah, he said that he will guide me through the night and day. He reads the Bible to me. Yeah, from Genesis to Revelation, I say, I was down in foolishness. I was like a bird without a nest until nothing come and take me over. Nothing, yes, nothing come and take me over. He reads the Bible to me, yeah. He said that he will guide me through the night and day. He reads the Bible to me, yeah. From Genesis to Revelation, I say, not the dreadlocks take me out of the wilderness. Yes, he lead me to the land of love. Oh yeah. When my mother and my father forsake me, it was not him who guide and protect me. Yes, it was not him who guide and protect me. He reads the Bible for me. Yeah. He said that he will guide me through the night. He reads the Bible for me. Yeah. From Genesis to Revelation, I say, I was down in foolishness. I was like a bird without a nest until Natty come and take me over. Natty, yes, Natty come and take me over. Natty, yes, Natty come and take me over. Natty, yes, Natty come and take me over. I was down in the valley for a very long time until Natty come and take me over. Natty, yes, Natty come and take me over.
Like when they say that we did not violate human rights. When they say to us, how come you have detainees? What about the press? What about elections? When they say to us, where are your elections? They don't turn around at the same time and say to their friends in South Africa, where are your elections? When they say to us that elections must be held, and if you don't have elections, then you can't expect support. And unless you have elections, then we can't give you the normal treatment. We say, Salvador Allende of Chile. Salvador Allende of Chile was elected in September 1970 by the people of Chile. Allende did not take power through a revolution. Allende did not form a militia. Allende did not grab any land or property. Allende had no political detainees. Allende did not crush the press. He did not close down the parliament. He did not suspend the constitution. He played by every rule they wrote, but they killed him still.
Collectively, now.
Just as mentioned, Leonard was just mentioning ancestors, sometimes people have trouble in various religions dealing with ancestors. And so I just wanted to say briefly that all peoples of the world have always dealt with their ancestry. And so we should not be asked to be different. And so that we make a difference between in Africa honorable ancestors and anyone that just dies. And so we look to find the value in our life, to uphold the value, and then always to raise God supreme first. Because if you put God supreme first, then other things will follow. And so we are commanded to put on the breastplate of righteousness, and to gird up our loins, and to put on the shod the feet with the preparation of truth. And so when it comes to ancestry, those that have problems in Christianity, be reminded that Christ himself confronted his ancestors. That when you had the Mount of Transfiguration, Christ was confronting Elijah or Elias and Moses, and those were his ancestors, and they were long time dead in the Old Testament while he was standing in the New Testament confronting them. But what were they doing when they were confronting him, and what was the conversation? We ought to be reminded that in our humanness, sometimes we have frailties or inconsistencies, but in our godliness, whether it's Jehovah, Yahweh, Elohim, or whatever you are saying in the highestness of God, or Jesus as God, then we know that we are complete and fulfilled. And so too, those ancestors that were not complete, Moses was not complete. He was not allowed to see the promised land. And why? Because he was told to talk to the rock, and instead he took the stick and he hit the rock. And so that we are too, and the rock represents the rock of ages, our spirit, our consciousness, our Christhood. And so if we go and we fight against our own spirit, take a stick and hit our own selves and hate our own self, we too will not see the higher consciousness, the promised land. But that if we talk in the stillness and listen to the small voice, or find that which is within us, that is that Godness, why we stand here to pour libation, because we are calling on that spirit within us that's to rise to its highest. And so whether you were in ancient Kemet, you would say it was the resurrection, and you spoke of the Caduceus symbol, that symbol that represented the tall pole with the serpentine powers around the pole, terminating in a grand solar disk that had wings on it. And so too, that becomes our human body, our human being, as we can go down and delve into the lower portions ourselves to cleanse, and then rise up to those higher forms, the higher consciousness within ourselves, until we too feel the solar disk and the solar ball that we represent as the highest form of whatever religion it is that you are involved in. And so that's why we come here. We come here so that we too, so that those ancestors, and so too Elias or Elijah, those that had the double portion in their lifetime, there was a problem because they did not pass it on. You see, what happened to you as you were given a double portion, a double measurement? And so too, we'll say to ourselves, if you were given a gift, are you able to pass it on to the next generation? Or will there be a generation gap where we take all of this knowledge and die and pass, as Leonard mentioned, those great ones that passed on? Will that be passed on, what from Dr. Clark, into the lower generation that we look at, that are gyrating on the video disc and sometimes wearing the wrong clothes and the wrong curse words coming out of their mouths? And so too, we are to be reminded that we too must take on the highest within us, whatever it is, it's the same, because there's only one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. Was indeed the same cry that Akhenaten had when he brought forth his solar disk with the hands terminating and radiating out from the solar disk. And so that we move that same solar ball into the one-centeredness that we see of Christ, as Christ with the solar disk around him, representing that he became the resurrected Savior, resurrected back to the Father, the two indeed as one. And so that when we deal with African culture, we find that we are not here to destroy and to cross out. When we go into labyrinths of the dungeons and the that are here, we are to go down there with the idea that we are taking on the ancestry within our own selves, and that we are castigating and exercising those elements in ourselves that's not correct and not right, and that we are moving on, because we are told to take on the whole armor of God. Why? Because we know that there are negative things within and without. And it's our job continually to battle against them and to stand at all times ready to defend our faith and to defend who we are. And so with that idea about ancestor or looking at those who have passed, we can stand here in unison, all on one accord, no matter what our faith may be.
Thank you.
So one of the traditions that our ancestors
I'm on live though.
in this part of the world had is the libation.
Yes, my people. Coming in hot on a Thursday afternoon, I want to give thanks, first of all, for the breath of life. Something we'd never take for granted. Give thanks for being here with the item another afternoon, another Thursday on the Ancestral Rock. Thank you for joining us. For those of you joining us online all over the world, we see some of y'all on our app here in the studio at WRFJ Atlanta, Little 5 Points, 89.3 FM, 51 years strong. Want to also thank those of you who made your pledges of support during our fall fund drive. And thank you in advance for your fulfillment of those pledges. That's the way we keep on this hardcore music and commentary and content going. We are not funded by those who are stifling the voice of the people every day, and with more apparency, there's being more clear about it. They're being more bold about it. We're not funded by those weapons manufacturers, and we're not funded by the Zionist lobby, which propping up the Democrats and the Republicans. We're not funded by them. We're funded by our people. And that's why we stay so. So keep on funding us. Keep on really financing your own liberation, because public education is truly an clear aspect, an important aspect of freedom. Got some special guests with us this afternoon, and I'm so happy. First of all, we'll be joined by Professor Horace Campbell at a little bit after the 3 o'clock hour, talking about today in our story, October, what is this, the 16th, 17th, 1968, when Dr. Walter Rodney was declared persona non grata by the Jamaican government and was told he had to return to where he came from, which was Montreal. He was a professor at the University of West Indies at that time, and he was banned from re-entry, because of his activism, because of his scholar activism. The guy was down in the Dongle in Bakawal and those places, teaching the Rastafari about Africa, grounding with his sisters and brothers, And it's funny how the more things change, the more they stay the same. And we also want to play an oldie but goldie. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was formed a few days ago, and a couple years before that, in 1966. And there was a lot going on at that time. And again, we always think of our Jegna, Dr. John Henry Clark, who said that we should throw it in the dash bin of history if it's not for our liberation, if it's not fully, specifically, ultimately for our liberation. We don't have no time for it. Whether it's the music we rock to, the interviews we play, the interviews we host, the clips we play, it don't matter. We want to always look at things in that context. And so we're going to play an excerpt from an interview from Baba Watani Tayemba that we did years ago about the House of Umoja which came, or had to go underground in a sense, after the Black Panther Party rose up. There's so much going on, you know, and because, especially in the age of social media, when we're only looking at clips and, you know, excerpts and memes, we don't get the full story. And all that in between time, we got some hardcore music for you. And I got my brother in the studio I ain't seen in years. I'm going to tell you who he is in a minute. He might let me put the camera on him. But he got something coming up this strong, and I want to make sure I'm front and center. And I know enough of y'all, if you know what the time is, you would be there as well. Continue to share the link, share the live. Those of you joining us on Facebook Live, on Instagram. Those of you joining us on terrestrial radio, 89.3. Let the family know we're live with you until the 4 o'clock hour. It sounds like the Ancestral Rock, and we give thanks. I want to send this shout, like I said, this song going out to my teacher, Abashaka, alongside so many other Rasta man and woman who, like Reggae George, say them read the Bible to I, you know. And it's a funny thing because, you know, as we come full circle, as so much of the world is reclaiming their indigenous roots, I could bear witness that what I got from when them read the Bible to I was nothing to do with a colonial mentality. It lead I deeper into ourself. Lead I deeper into ourself. So it's true that life is what you make it. And the other thing about it is the Bible that they read was not even just opening up some leaves of a page in a book. We're talking about a living testimony. You know, walk in the prophecy. Same way, so many years ago, I remember being in Southern California, listening to Imam Jamil, may the Most High free him and all political prisoners. Had a tape on repeat, tape called Deceiving Our Nature. Read against Rome, you know, as a youth man. And of course, coming up in the golden age of hip hop, we were very much exposed to aspects of the Islamic world. You know, as one who in some ways was captivated by some of the rhetoric of a lot of our Pan-African scholars. I say the rhetoric, and I separate the rhetoric from the teachings, you know, because there's the teachings, there's the historical truth, and then there's the personal perspective. For me, I ain't want to hear nothing about Islam in that sense, because I don't want to hear nothing to do with no Arabs who I know had a huge part to play in the suffering of our people. This is historical fact. That I met an elder named Baba Nazim Hamid. He never read the Bible to I, but he show I self in Africa, in the Islamic world, you know. So the point of the matter is, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And as we're in another election cycle, some would say a selection cycle, it's very important that we prepare ourselves for a new gear. It's a new world, and it's been birthing for a while now. One of the most ridiculous things one could do is try to stop a birth when the birth is taking place. Like the mountains can't hold back the river. Stay tuned to yourself, y'all.
Way down, this is down, it's part of me. And number one is in the air. People dancing everywhere. All the music man is in. They get on the disco rock. It's gonna cause a shock attack. And this is sound will never fly. It sure has got to reach the top, yeah. Walking through with me. You know now it's dancing time. Walking through with me. And I know I'll make it fine. Walking through with me. You know now it's dancing time. Walking through with me. And I know I'll make it fine. Walker's music on the ground. Just living it all over the world. Because I'm feeling all alone. Selecting your favorite song. Just now it's on the radio. Dropping on the radio. DJ dropping on the free. It's moving on the R&B. Get with me. Get on your lips, dancing time. Get with me. And I know I'll make it fine. Get with me. Get on your lips, dancing time. Get with me. And I know I'll make it fine. Take it up to disco rock. It's gonna go top to top. And this is how the never fly. Sure as that to reach the top, yeah. 'Cause now it's on the radio. Dropping on the radio. DJs dropping on the free. It's moving on the R&B. Let's move with me. Get on now, it's dancing time. Move with me. And I know I'll make it fine. Move with me. Get on now, it's dancing time.
Bunny Wailer say rock and groove with I and I. We mean what we say when we say what we say.
Yes, you, Mr. Politician. We're not blind, we're seeing you. We use the people's mystery for your prayer, and you use war to be a business. Now I want you to tell the youths up now in the new millennium. How long this will continue? And how long we believe you will last? I wonder why politicians don't want to go away. Rastas can't get no peace in this land. I wonder why politicians don't want to go away. Rastas can't get no peace on the land. Just that you run them way, drive them way. When them come talk about election, I have been the run them way, drive them way. Wow! Come talk about.
Hold on, man. I gotta take that in person.
I wonder why you keep them away. I get no peace in a yard.
Yeah, let me show you a Fred now.
I wonder why you teach you.
No, Fred got a son now. Yeah, I'm still not grandfather. Yeah. Hold on.
Run them way. Run them way. Come talk about election. I'm not giving that run them way. I have been the run them way. Man. Come talk Eddie, I wonder why politicians them won't go away. Rastaman can't get no peace and trouble. Wonder why politicians them won't go away. Big man can't get no peace in a jungle. Tivoli and jungle unite try. Run them.
Run them way. Yeah, run them way. All I'm pulling Josephine because the one-eyed man see more than many people with 4 eyes. It's a message that needs to be heard, and we're not afraid to share it, with the world. And we dare you, we double dog dare you to conclude that this means we are apolitical or don't know what's going on. Or somebody told me the other day I shared something with them that was, criticizing some of the aspects of Kamala Harris in her history. Somebody told me I was doing the work of Trump. And it's funny, but it makes sense on a real second grade level because, there's still people in this world that feel there's just two parties in this world and two ways to do things. And this is what we're getting at. The interview we're getting ready to have, I think we're going to be talking about that in a way in terms of the Jamaican context. This is not just in the United States, but like they say, when America sneezes, the world catch a cold. We have no love for no Donald Trump, fascist. We don't have no love for the other side either. We have love for our Mother Earth. And we're interested in what type of politicians, we're interested in what kind of policies, what type of people will stand up for that, will not be complicit with genocide. We're interested, as we've been doing programming here for the longest time since before Harris' presidency candidacy was announced, because every 4 years, for as long as I remember, I hear people telling me it's the most important election of our life. Vote and die and all that kind of foolishness. Vote or die. And we just want to know some basic things, and so when we can get past the rhetoric and they're very elementary, they're really, I want to say retarded, but that's no disrespect to anyone with a disability, with a real disability. But, as Malcolm X said, political chump kind of conversation to say, boy, if you criticize the Democrats, you must want Trump. You criticize one thing, you must want the other thing. The sister years ago, I forget her name. I got to find her name so I can call her name. A sister from Nigeria had a very important discourse that she brought to the world about the danger of a single story. And in one way, just one way, because we don't want to oversimplify things either, this whole two-party business has ravaged the whole world. And that's an example of the danger of a single story. So we're going to let Joseph Hill speak to you for a minute. We have Professor Dr. Baba Horace Campbell with us, getting ready to reason with us for a few moments. As we said, we're commemorating the anniversary of Dr. Walter Rodney being declared persona non grata in the midst of a two-party system in Jamaica. And we want to know what that really was all about. Let's get some perspective on it. And after Uncle Horace Campbell, we'll be talking with Auntie Pat Rodney, his wife. Got her perspective from an intimate space is very important as well, Stay tuned to yourself. But in the meantime, I want to welcome a brethren to the studio, our brother. We ain't seen him around these parts in a long time, man. I Self Divine, Shaka the Mike Master, original. Some of us know him from the Micronaut days, UVS days. Man, what's going on, brother? Shit. Shit.
These homes areas with high concentration of carbon imprint.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised, I have to do this work. It's
Right.
It's not a choice.
Right.
It's a blessing when you know that you're fulfilling.
I see.
So I would say I moved. While I was doing the music, I was always trying to figure out what was my purpose.
Right.
Work.
Sorry about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're about the work and not just the word. I mean, from the jump, from knowing you, real recognize real, as they say. So we're seeing the fire in your eyes and in your heart. So of course, there's no surprise at all to hear that you're doing that same work. That's the work we on. From we met each other. That's what we was about. And I want to big up our brother, Minister Server, original Nation Time Syndicate. He called himself the dopest hip hop grandpa. When I say he called himself that, because that's up for contestation. That's up for debate. But big up yourself, Server. He always talks about people of our generation and the necessity of us really digging our heels deep, and taking leadership in a true way in our world. And I know you just been on that. I mean, I know that we ain't spoken in 5-6 years at least. But it's very good to see you, my brother. You made my whole day.
I had to tap in. I mean, I'm not going to come into the soil and not break bread with my people.
True.
And it's like we never left.
Right.
Back. It's very rare.
Right.
For folks like that. So,
yeah, it's true. It's a blessing.
Yes.
It's a blessing.
And you're looking good.
Yeah, I'm trying to be like you when I grow up. Trying to be like you when I grow up. These pictures we sharing backstage, y'all. It's amazing. Because Shaka know my babies from young, and likewise, And wow, man. No longer babies.
They'll always be our babies.
Right. No longer babies. Stay tuned to yourself, family. I want to welcome, without any further ado, to the airways of WRFG. Someone who we have plenty love for. Shaka, you gonna stay around? Yes. Someone we have plenty love for. We have heard him before on this show many times, as well as other shows on WRFG. He wears many crowns in the community, in our global community. As I say, he's a father, he's a husband, he's an author, a prolific author, he's a professor. I big up my sister, Karen Marie, in her ancestral station now. Someone I think passed through his hands as well, but when I met Karen, that was one of our points of connection. When she talked about where she went to school and all of that, and started telling me about our Baba, who I knew from another perspective, as through his relationship with my parents. But I want to introduce him in the context today, after all I've said, in the context of the chairman of Global Pan-African Movement North America Chapter, Professor Dr. Horace Campbell. Good afternoon, Uncle Horace. Can you hear me?
Are you Nkulima Raskofi?
Hearing you. So
Nkulima. Nkulima is someone who works on the land.
Okay.
Is that you, Kofi?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Still can't hear me. I'm not hearing you. So let's get it straight so the people can hear you clearly.
Can you hear me now?
Are you there?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
All right, let me take a little break and handle this.
Can you hear me, Kofi?
All right, yes, now I can hear you.
You can hear me.
I hear you
Okay.
clearly. Maybe you were
Okay.
muted. Yes,
All
good
right.
afternoon, and thank you for joining us on such a short notice.
Well, thank you. I was saying, I'm reading your name here, and it says you're Mkulima.
Benny.
And
Indeed.
Mkulima, these are honored people among us because these are the people who feed us.
Yes, sir.
And make sure that we're nourished.
Yes, sir.
And so you're carrying in the midst of Atlanta a very honorific title. So I hope you live up to the name of Mkulima Raskofi, because you not only are now growing food, but you come from a tradition of freedom fighters. In fact, I was speaking to your Baba yesterday.
Okay.
And your Baba would be taking a different position from what you were saying when we were hearing on the news. But we had a long discussion yesterday, so I hadn't been in touch with him for a while. So it's good that we're here to talk about October 17th and the question of Walter Rodney and Walter Rodney's relationship to the mass of African people in the Caribbean, and in this case, the mass of African people in Jamaica, and why the Jamaican state is afraid of African peoples in the Caribbean and in Jamaica. I think that's the spirit in which you ask us to have this deliberation.
This is absolutely the spirit, and I thank you again for taking the time. We'll be talking to Auntie Pat a little later, his wife, of course, a good close comrade of yours as well. But I want to ask you because, there was, first of all, because of your unique view, your unique view through your own perspective, through your own experience. And that says a whole lot in itself. And then also, of course, being a comrade of his, being a close colleague of his. I always remember my first introduction to you was the book to which my father wrote the intro or wrote a preface or the foreword. I don't know which one it was part of the book. The preface, yes. Rasta and Resistance.
Yes.
Walter Rodney. Marcus Garvey to Walter Rodney. I don't remember the subtitle, but
that is the subtitle.
It was very insightful, and through the years, we've been able to develop a relationship of our own outside of, your relationship with my parents and everything. And I've always enjoyed listening to your commentary, reading your commentary. Sometimes we would disagree on points, and that's part of life, iron sharpen iron, as they say. But your commentary is very valued because of your experience and your journey, So when we're talking about Walter Rodney, first of all, help us. We don't have that much time, but help us to locate what was happening in Jamaica at the time, and then in the world, broadly in terms of the African world. That would even give rise to Walter Rodney being banned in Jamaica from returning to his post at the University of Jamaica or University of the West Indies.
Yes. Well, briefly, I think most listeners to your program would know something about Walter Rodney, that he was an African from the Caribbean, born in that part of the Caribbean and South America called Guyana. And after he finished his secondary education, he went to the university in Kingston as an undergraduate.
Mm-hmm.
And while he was in Kingston as an undergraduate, his consciousness as an African from Guyana was further piqued and elevated by his relationship with the Jamaican masses. And even while he was an undergraduate, he wrote a very short essay about the slave. And what he was communicating in that essay about the slave was the consciousness of the enslaved, that's one, the optimism of the enslaved, that two, and the continuous fighting spirit of the enslaved. And those are three things about Walter Rodney that he carried in his own life: his consciousness of his Africanness, his being optimistic, and his willingness to fight for justice. Now, Walter Rodney went among the Jamaican masses who are overwhelmingly African.
Mm.
And one of the documents that most of your listeners would be familiar with is communication with the Jamaican masses called Groundings with My Brothers.
Yes.
That if you were writing this now, he would call it Groundings with My Brothers and Sisters.
Mm.
What did he mean by groundings? Now, in the tradition of intellectuals, 56 years ago, the intellectual was not supposed to spend time among the poor people.
Mm.
The intellectuals were supposed to spend time researching, writing, and then in their social time, do the social life of what was then the middle classes in the Caribbean.
Mm.
But Walter Rodney spent his time among the most oppressed Caribbean people, Jamaican people, who were then the Rastafari movement.
Mm-hmm.
And his time among the Rastafari, while he was on an undergraduate, elevated him to the point that even his choice of doctoral work was influenced heavily by his time among the Rastafari. So he went away to study at the University of London, and he wrote a thesis on the history of the Upper Guinea Coast in West Africa. This study alerted him even more to the ravages of the transatlantic slave trade. And so after finishing his PhD in London, he went to Tanzania. And then he was invited to Jamaica after 1 year, and he was teaching in the University of the West Indies. While teaching there, he spent time in the 1967, early 68, with the Jamaican masses. And you can see from his writing, African history in the service of Black liberation. That meant that he wanted to deploy his knowledge of African history on the side of the Jamaican masses. So he spent his time among the Jamaican masses. He was communicating his knowledge. He was doing what they call in West Africa, he was being a griot. He was communicating knowledge and he was gaining knowledge. Now that, for the Jamaican government, is subversive. It's subversive because the knowledge of the Jamaican masses would mean that they would contest the social system as it existed in Jamaica. And so when Walter Rodney went to the Black Writers Conference in Montreal in 1968, they banned him from returning to Jamaica. And the history of that banning and his relationship to the Jamaican masses is still part of the history of the political development and political maturity of the Jamaican society, because it sharpened the consciousness of the masses of Jamaican about the nature of the Jamaican state, that the Jamaican state was a state in the service of imperialism and white supremacy. So this is the context of Walter Rodney returning to Jamaica, and he's being banned from returning to his job as a lecturer at the University of the West Indies in Kingston, Jamaica.
Give thanks. We're listening to the voice of Professor Dr. Horace Campbell talking about Dr. Walter Rodney and something that happened on this day, which out of which ensued the famous Rodney riots. I was reading something from the great artist Neville Garrick, who is the one who did most of Bob Marley's art covers, and Peter Tosh as well, album covers and everything. But he was making mention to the fact that, let me just read from him directly from the lion's mouth himself. He's now transitioned and is on his journey, celestial journey. He said on October 16, 1968, Walter Rodney was declared persona non grata by the Jamaican government. On this day, the controversial Guyanese political activist and history lecturer was barred entry to Jamaica following a trip to Montreal, Canada, where he participated in a Congress of Black Writers. The ban sparked the infamous Rodney riot in Kingston, led off by hundreds of UE students and faculty members. This was the first demonstration I participated in. Left my job as an accounting clerk at ICJ as the students marched by my office building. I got an urge to join them. Let me see. I got an urge to join them. So I did. First steps as an activist for truth and rights. During this period, Black books were also banned by the government. The struggle continues. This is WRFG Atlanta 89.3 in the FM dial. On the phone line with us, Professor Horace Campbell. I was queuing up a song. I can't pre-announce it, but I just play a little tip of it. I can tell you that the artist, Prince Buster, who is, of course, such a huge name in the foundation of reggae music when you talk about reggae music and the evolution of reggae music. But not him alone. So many people were vocally expressive of their disdain for what happened to Dr. Walter Rodney. I was listening to an old interview with Martha McPlanner. Martha McPlanner, of course, is the Ras who had the social capital, let's put it that way, the authority amongst the people to be called up when His Imperial Majesty came to Jamaica in 1966 to try to calm the crowd down, But during this interview, he was talking, Muta Baruka was interviewing him, he was talking about how his flat was raided and they took all these books, and he was accused of being a member of the Communist Party and everything because he was one of the people who was hosting, he was one of those Rastafari who was hosting Walter Rodney. You've already said a lot, and you've made it very clear. I want to ask you to elaborate a little bit, Uncle Horace, on the class. I want to focus on the classism, because you mentioned something about how the average professor, the academic, the scholar, 50 odd years ago was not expected to be, moving amongst the grassroots. They would do their lectures and just maybe go and watch cricket and have tea and crumpets or whatever, toasting the queen or whatever. I'm being a little facetious, but probably not exaggerating. So talk about the classism in Jamaica, which existed at that time. And I want to ask you also to comment on whether or not that is now behind us, or if we're still dealing with the same thing. A lot of times people say the more things change, the more they stay the same. I know you're not a fan of sound bites or cliche, but maybe there's truth to that. Talk about that, please.
Well, I would encourage your listeners to read this pamphlet called Groundings with My Brothers, because in this pamphlet, Groundings with My Brothers, Walter Rodney went into great details about the social structure of Jamaican society.
Mm.
And the social structure has not changed very much. But what you will find in that book is clarity about who are the masses of the people who produce the wealth in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
The masses of people who produce the wealth in Jamaica were the Black African working people. Now, we call them working peoples, and this is very important from the point of Walter Rodney and people like myself, because the Caribbean Black worker was not a worker that was separated from their means of subsistence. By this, I mean that the worker in a factory in Atlanta, when the worker goes to work in Atlanta in the factory, the wage that the worker earns in Atlanta should be sufficient to pay transportation to go to work, to pay rent, to buy food, and to cover basic expenses.
Operative word should.
Should, yes.
But go ahead. Yes, I hear you.
But in the Caribbean, the worker had to be subsidized by their family. That is, outside of going to work, the family had to have a garden that produced some callaloo, some bananas, some yam, some gungo peas, and other crops which would support the levity, as my brethren would say. So the working people meant that people would be called small farmers,
Yes.
and peasants would be also workers, that is cutting sugar cane,
Yeah.
and working in the cutting bananas. That was 50 years ago.
Mm.
That would be the majority of the people in Jamaica, 90% of the people. Then you would have another 5% who would be called the middle strata. And that would be those people who earn their living as intermediaries between the government and the people. There would be lawyers and doctors and high school principals or insurance agents. Now, the core relationship between the black masses and that 5% would be the skin color. That is, although the country is majority black, 92% of the country black, that small class of what they call brown people in Jamaica would call themselves the middle class. Now, that middle class looked down on the black masses in Jamaica. They did not believe the black masses were worth anything. And it is among those people that Rodney spent time. Then on the top of the Jamaican society would be what would be 1%, the 14 families, which were all white and Jewish in Jamaica. So that is a social structure you had in Jamaica 50 years ago. What has happened in the past 50 years is that the middle strata, the black professional class, who most commonly come out of law and political operatives, they have now competed with the brown middle class. And it is among themselves that they have divided Jamaica to the point where they have divided the Jamaican working peoples to the point where they can put guns in the hands of the Jamaican working people. So the Jamaican working people go and kill each other for that top white ruling class and the black political class. So Jamaican society, 50 years after Walter Rodney, is a society with very low respect for African life. The killing of the poor people in Jamaica, the extent of militarization of communities and guns in Jamaica is unspeakable. They call it crime, but I don't call it crime because the entire political system in Jamaica is a criminal system. It's a system against the African peoples. And that's why the reparations campaign in the Caribbean is to repair that maldistribution of wealth. And the maldistribution of wealth can only be changed by overthrowing capitalism in Jamaica. And Walter Rodney spelled this out, not only in his writings about Jamaica, but about Guyana and Africa. Only a social revolution that places political, economic, and cultural power in the hands of the working people that will change the conditions of Black people in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, in Guyana, and in every country in Africa.
Sure, you're listening to the voice of Professor Horace Campbell. We only have a few more minutes left with him, and we thank you again for taking time to be with us on this historic day. This is Ancestral October. A little while before you came on, we were playing a speech by Maurice Bishop, one of his only known speeches made in the United States a few months before his assassination, where he was spelling out chapter and verse and really quoting the State Department reports, propaganda, about the Grenadian Revolution, which included a statement that said that the Grenadian Revolution was particularly dangerous because the leadership was Black, primarily Black, and that the leadership was, or the Grenadian people were English speaking. And this could have a very dangerous effect on the African people in America. In the few minutes we have left, I want to ask you to help us to draw some parallels. You know, of course, as Dr. Clark says, and we quote this mantra all the time, all history is a current event. You know, the events that transpired 5,000 years ago, 5 years ago, 500 years ago directly impact what will transpire 5 years or 50 years or 5,000 years from now. So when you're looking at Walter Rodney, first of all, I want to ask you, even on a personal level, where were you when this happened, and what was some of the, we've heard a lot about and we'll hear more from his wife, Dr. Patricia Rodney, a little later if we can get her on the phone, about the Jamaican response. What was the response around the African world to this banning?
Well, I was at the Black Writers Congress in Montreal. I was in the sessions with Walter Rodney. Of course, I was a younger person than I am now, and I was a student. Walter Rodney was already a lecturer. And I heard him give that lecture, African History in the Service of Black Revolution. And I was living in Toronto. I was an activist in the Black community at that time. And when he was expelled from Jamaica, he came back to Toronto. And so we spent time together on Spadina Avenue. I remember specifically his time there. And even then, the FBI and the RCMP had attached a young man who we later found out was an intelligence agent who was hanging around with us at that time. But what struck me then, and when I became close to him later after East Africa, was his humility and the fact that this man had so much knowledge and he would be anywhere grounding with us in the community. So I would say that one of the most important things we should do to the young people, and I hope some of the young people in the vast university complex called the Clark Atlanta University, would turn to Walter Rodney at this time when our society is facing fascism. When you have in our society, and in the case of Atlanta, a congressional representative who would say that the hurricane is a man-made event, then you'd see that the level of illiteracy among the ruling class is bringing the society to a precipice. So I would say to the young people in Atlanta that it would be very important for them to study the writings of Walter Rodney, to study the practice of Walter Rodney, and not to be aloof from a political process that is going on all around them. When you can have a representative who could be a congressional representative who is so afraid of the Black experience in the United States that they would be calling for the banning of books, they would be calling for the control over women's bodies, that young Black people cannot stay aloof. So I would urge young Black people to be engaged, and part of this engagement is to study the life and legacy of our brother and ancestor, Walter Rodney.
I see. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. You know, you always give me the opportunity to talk back to the screen or whatever. So I'd like to engage you in another time about this whole this whole question. One of the things you raised in terms of hurricane being man-made and all that. Because what I do understand is that a lot of people are using that rhetoric to deny the reality of the climate change and the machines that we know are definitely causing more raging storm, which is these big factories and all this kind of stuff.
Precisely. And that is why our people must understand the changes that are going on around them, because in the Caribbean and in this country, hurricanes are changing the very nature of how we can live. And the only people who have planned properly to deal with this are the Cubans. The Cubans have developed a 100-year plan. But not only preventative, but how to deal with these things when they come.
Exactly. But the other side of that coin, as I've acknowledged that side, which needs to be acknowledged, is that there's a lot of proof. The European Union has given studies on it about these projects like HARP and everything, that people are tampering with the weather, and that's not a big mystery. And I don't feel like that would be in the spirit of. I don't think that would be in the spirit of somebody like Walter Rodney in terms of intellectual integrity. That don't seem like it would be the wisest thing to just throw those things off to the side as
no. But Harper is very different from what the congressional representative is saying. Harper is not talking about the use of military capabilities to enhance the military power of the United States, which is a very different thing from wiping out communities and people's livelihood. You're talking about a special military capabilities that is developed in relationship to the military management of the international system and the control of the international system and the US dollar, which serves the same capitalist class that this representative comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. Which has been used, and it can be argued with good data, especially in a place like with New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina, and others, which has been used to wipe out communities and gentrify. I mean, so it's just a whole layered kind of thing. And I guess my adamant stance is about resisting this singular narrative. You know, like if you criticize Kamala Harris, you must be for Trump. When it's been proven that there's third parties now that have enough leverage that would not be a so-called spoiler of an election, but actually have enough leverage to win the electoral votes and everything. So it's just a lot of, in my mind, I hear a lot of intellectual laziness that now, that is coming out of a new type of movement, which is not reflection of people like yourself and Walter Rodney and that class of people who would speak truth to power and criticize their own so-called people, would not spare anyone if they need to be criticized, if they need to be critiqued, it's a different kind of thing going on. So that's the type of thing that I'm interested in, because not just for the argument's sake, but because we can see how that has also contributed to the dumbing down of our ability to think for ourselves.
Let me leave you with this one thought. And this thought is about strategy and tactics. Strategy and tactics means that one has to read a situation at a certain time.
Yes.
And we have to learn from what happened in Germany after 1933. After 1933 in Germany, there was a very big debate between all the different sections of the German political class.
Yes.
And I'm thinking of the communists, the social democrats, and those on the left. And what happened is that where Marcus Garvey and the poor black people in the United States understood what Hitler meant, especially after the Italian invasion of Abyssinia in 1935, while the poor Trinidad oil workers who were demonstrating understood what Hitler meant, there was confusion among the intellectuals about the meaning. And I think we should learn as many lessons as possible from that episode and then develop a strategy and tactic which would engage the emergence of fascism in this country at this moment.
Indeed, indeed. Imam Jamil H. Rap Brown, someone you would know very well, spoke to us about fascism and said that fascism was well alive in this country.
Precisely.
30 years ago.
Precisely.
So it's not an emerging thing, even though we have some people now.
It's taking a new form, though.
Yeah, we have some people now who are very pompous, and it can be argued that it's being nurtured even under democratic leadership. So I don't want people just feel like the only way that fascism is going to take root in this country is with a Trump presidency.
Not at all. Not only that, one has to understand that the militarism, warfare, and the nature of Wall Street are the conditions that breed fascism. That is transcends political parties. But
Exactly.
and that is because the nature of Wall Street and the military technical complex provide certain dangers. But what we do know, however, is that we have to carve out spaces so we can organize against them. And one space you're holding now is a very important space to be able to speak to Black people about the danger.
That's it. Thank you so much for joining us, Baba. Horace
Thank
Campbell.
you.
I could
All
have
right.
you here all afternoon. Much love.
Yes.
To you and the
Why not,
family.
my brethren?
Yes, I was that.
I will follow.
Rastafari. Blessed love.
Rastafari.
Family, tuned in to yourself and your station for progressive information. In come the man called Prince Buster. Yeah, my brother Ishaka, myself,
It's all the same.
in the studio with us, taking in the vibes. You got a show coming up this strong in Atlanta, right?
Yes. On Saturday, ATL Underground, DJ Danger, Mafioso, DJ Sky, JB's Record Lounge, October 19th through the 7th.
Yeah. That just sounds so refreshing, just hearing that coming from you.
Wait till you see. I ain't lost a step.
Of course, and we know this. Pick up yourself, Kari Diop, original, one of our brothers from the time of the Zulu Nation, the McPheeters Dennis, Think Green, INC, feeding the people. It's beautiful to see how we've all matured in this life and, return to our mother. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Prince Buster at the control, y'all. Prince Buster, mighty Prince Buster, pioneer of reggae music. This musical disc called Rodney, Dr. Rodney, Black Power.
Reggae child. Reggae. To be black with ambition in Jamaica.
We heard a little bit from Maurice Bishop. We'll continue to hear from him. Of course, the anniversary of his assassination, along with other members of the New Jewel movement, is coming up, followed by the invasion of Grenada, Operation Urgent Fury. But I want you to hear this particular clip.
Reggae child, reggae. It's the culture. Don't get caught. Lego. Lego. Ain't loud. That way you're proud. But I want to tell you what that same report also said. And said that also made us very dangerous. And that is that the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada are predominantly black. They said that 95% of our population is black, and they had a correct statistic. And if we have 95% of predominantly African origin in our country, then we can have a dangerous appeal to 30 million black people in the United States.
Sometimes nothing else need to be said. That report is true. Yes, Peter Tosh say Africa have to be free by 1983. We know that was not achieved, but there was an energy that's happening in that time that we see resurgence of that same energy again. The other day we celebrated the birth anniversary of Fela Kuti, Fela Anikopalo Kuti, and also the anniversary of the assassination of Thomas Sankara. Same day, 1983. Of course, Fela was Sankara's friend, and just like in Zimbabwe, it was noted even by the person who was just with us, Professor Horace Campbell, in his book, that Bob Marley's music was so integral, was so inspirational to the ZANU freedom fighters in the bush fighting against Ian Smith and the British. Thomas Sankara credited Fela's music with the revolution, with inspiring the revolution in Burkina Faso. Thomas Sankara was murdered in October 1983. But we see the energy of Sankara on another level happening right now in that region. Nationalizing the gold mines after all these years, bringing together members of the West African Bloc. And we don't see these things on the news. That's why we have to hear about them on WRFG, because, you know, if we knew how many people in the world, Brother Shaka, thought the way we thought, if we knew we wasn't in the minority, we'd probably walk this earth with a different swag and we'd be accomplishing even more by now. But I want to talk to you for a minute. for those of y'all just joining us, we're talking to the legendary, I don't use that word lightly, legendary, I Self Divine, original vice grip man when it comes to the microphone. But let's talk about, I want to ask you for your personal testimony of how music has influenced you to make shifts, improvements, upgrades, you know, cut new paths in your own life.
So here's how I'll explain it. I was involved in what was the precursor to hip hop, and was introduced, and my entry point to hip hop was through my mother and community. And so I was having a conversation a while ago that art, music, politics, and culture never was separate. It was always presented that way. And I had a set of agreements with my community and ancestors in terms of what the content of my music would be. But I also believe that the power of an artist and a trickster is to have radical imagination. You know, culture precedes politics. You know, it sets the tone.
Over here.
You know, they always talk about, you know, Jackie Robinson crossing the color line before the Board of Education. So culture proceeds. You know, so that's all I know. You know, and as we spoke on earlier, the goal is always to, you know, us being here, we're not here for ourselves. You know, there's a long lineage of people that are expecting us and requiring us to do our due diligence to get to that part of the race, so to speak. So it's definitely integral, but it's just, it can't be by itself. It has to be in tandem with other acts and works.
So I wanted you to elaborate a little bit when you said the precursor, you was involved in the precursor to hip hop.
So hip hop, soul music, you know, going to concerts, to disco dance, you know, going to rallies. I'm originally from South Central Los Angeles, so we'd be at the Watchtowers, we'd be at the festivals and things of that nature.
I didn't know you.
We talked about it because you was in LA too.
Yeah, I was in San Diego.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's been a minute, but
Oh wow.
You know, and so like I was raised around a lot of artists, activists, and organizers. You know, like in preschool, teachers who were teaching me were organizers from the Chavez Ravine. Everybody on the West Coast, the Chavez Ravine was a Mexican encampment that was, well, not encampment, but a neighborhood that was destroyed in order for Dodger Stadium to be built.
Right.
You know, so
Talk about it.
Like heavy hitters. You know, even for that matter, like I don't speak on it a lot, but you know, John Henrik Clarke is actually, you know, uncle through marriage. You know, through my mom's sister.
True. So, but let's get to back to more into this activism, because you know, for people who know you, everything you say make perfect sense, because you've always, you know, when you talk about creative imagination, I mean that's the MC's gift to the world. That's hip hop gift to the world. I won't say it started with, you know, that's a whole long rabbit hole right there. Did it start in the 1970s after Cool Herc and everything and all that kind of stuff? We ain't going there, but we know that has been the griot's gift to the world. Let's say that. Creative imagination. And always making the creative part, making it funky. You know, the ability to move the crowd with it. So who were some of the artists, again, that inspired you in your own journey? Not maybe even before picking up the microphone, but just like who.
And what I would say is it would also be with the visual, because a lot of people don't know I MC and I'm a graffiti artist, and I've been doing both the same, you know. But, you know, for me, you know, in terms of the early hip hop, all of the things that everyone was involved in, you know, I'm a Tila Rock, you know, I like the early Def Jam. I'm a student of ultramagnetic MCs, you know. No ultramagnetic MCs, no Dayline, no Organized Confusion, no. They were the ones that broke left, that let us know we could have different syllables, use different samples and things of that.
Talk about it.
You know.
Cool Keith and them, they don't get a lot of credit. They don't get the credit they deserve.
Lyrically as well. I mean,
we hear about Rakim breaking off the norm, and which he deserves that, you know, absolutely. But there was others, like you said. You know, even like Masters of Ceremony, early Grand Poobah, you know, prior to Don Barron, and
Grand Poobah,
Talk about it.
You know, but also it was a blessing. You know, I was raised off of K-Day.
Okay, in LA.
24 hours. You know, West Park, Greg Mack, Lisa Canning. You know what I mean? Like So that
See,
was,
we heard about K-Day. We would get tapes in San Diego. I moved to San Diego in 1986.
Mhm.
I remember when my mom allowed me to go to public school one year to test the waters again, and I was, being a Taurus,
yes,
a young Taurus,
yes.
a straight up knucklehead. So she got me right back up out of there. But I remember when that LL dropped, Run DMC, I think Raising Hell, Beastie Boys, all that kind of stuff. But we used to get tapes from K-Day, but we didn't get that full immersion of K-Day.
Yeah.
We got just the excerpts and and the vestiges and a whole lot of that Southern California gang culture.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow. So now, when it comes to today, one of the things that Chuck D said is that hip hop is the Black America CNN, and we could extend that now to just say it's the grassroots CNN. Talk about what you see around the world. Talk about what you see under the radar as it relates to the creativity and that connection of the music with social movement, because a lot of the narrative, even where in what you would consider to be formerly progressive circles, is that like hip hop ain't saying nothing no more, and it's like, what are you talking about?
You're just not going deep enough. You're not in proximity. But what I would say is,
so you're not in proximity.
No, sir.
Yeah, that says a lot right there.
But one of the things that I started to understand in terms of revolution, particularly in the capitalist society, is all the tools of our liberation will be co-opted. So if you don't want to move at the speed of capitalism because you're still moving at that speed, but if you know everything will be co-opted at some point, then you're always searching for the next or figuring out different ways, and so the era that we came from, it was readily available. And there wasn't so many schisms, so to speak. And then at that point in time, they didn't understand the word sound or how powerful it was.
They didn't catch up with the slang.
Nah, but then at that pivotal point, there's lots of documentation and conversations of the record company also connecting with the prison industrial complex and them being very intentional. We came from that era where we saw Public Enemy go platinum. So we know it's there, so it's in the same way that you talked about, man-made weather. You have an engineering of like a dumbing down, so to speak, of our seeds, and it's very intentional, and it's difficult when you try to bring that level of truth and people are dismissing in the same way that, if like a zero-sum game, you can't have critical analysis of someone, and if you do, then that means you're anti. That's very narrow in focus. And there's also like it's not real.
Yes, it's just really,
and it's controlling the terms of debate. You know what I mean? Because we could get into a whole conversation about the electoral college because we don't even we still don't even vote. Right.
I mean, it's a whole lot to it, but I'm interested. I enter the conversation, especially when it's not my ego, with the concern about how we think and what moves us. What moves us. Because when I see the debate, not the debate, but the bait, B-A-I-T, being dropped, and always from a divisive perspective, divide and rule, Now it's like a real genetically engineered gender war. It's crazy. And we just bite the bait every time because we're dealing with a person or a system that understands our nuances, that understands our vulnerabilities.
They study us more than we study them. We appeal to morality.
More than we study ourselves.
Correct. We appeal to morality. Do what's right as opposed to they understand that we're going to try to appeal to morality.
Real talk. Our brother Shaka in the studio. Tell us about this show one more time.
Yeah, this show is going to be this weekend. It's going to be a blast. I'm looking forward to it. First and foremost, man, I'm just happy that I'm on people's hearts and minds that they would even reach out, but it's going to be myself, Binkus Records, good brothers, Eddie Meeks, DJ Pocket, my man Chief Justice. We go way back. It's going to be hosted by Fort Knox. It's really like a family reunion, man. Hey, it's gonna be nothing but giggles and deep laughs. You
Right,
feel me?
right,
You
right.
don't see nothing but teeth and they be smashing lips.
And lyrics.
Lyrics, because honestly, I feel gratitude and lucky what we've been through.
True.
The cocaine, the crack era, Gen X.
Mm-hmm.
There's a different level of resilience. We don't look for anyone to save us. We know that we are who we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a blessing to be here, healthy, with vitality.
That's it. That's it. Our brother Iself Divine.
Lion in the land, Babylon going down, 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 Babylon going down. Well, when the youth them in the ghetto say they more than freedom, and the way the system set up, you see more than shake up. If we still fight the good fight, so cool you feed up. Babylon days are numbered, the time don't come up. Yeah, the wicked them strong, but Jack is sweet us. Wago see Rastafari, bring them see us. It's the light of this world, watch the world of the look. While Babylon going down, 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 Babylon going down. Mama say love your roots and culture. She said forward ever, head backward never. The wolves and the leopards, the sharks and vultures. Them come with lies trying to destroy the youth, but the youth them pulling them culture. Babylon going down, Babylon going down.
A blessed full moon for all the family, the hunter moon, full hunter's moon. I want to thank Baba Kwame Calamari for always providing us with that full moon food. I might read it if I get a chance. I want to share with you a thought, a reflection from Samora Machel, who was also martyred in October, the month of October, Ancestral October. He said, international solidarity. International solidarity is not an act of charity. It is an act of unity between allies fighting on different terrains towards the same objective. The foremost of these objectives is to aid the development of humanity to the highest level possible. Food for thought, you know. Ishmael, I said Babylon going down, and it's true. It's gone already. All you see is the illusion of inclusion. Rome has fallen, you know, like that. What's that movie? London has fallen. The new Rome has fallen. Don't wait till the ports close permanently to make a conscious move.
Babylon going down, 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 Babylon going down. Well, when the youth them in the ghetto say they more than freedom, and the way the system set up, you see more than shake up. But we still have fight, they can fight, so who are you paid up? Babylon did.
Reaching out to my brethren, Iras. Oh, yes, Mr. Levi. SOS, Sons of Selassie. Now, do remember that that was that and this is this. In come yet another musical disc to make it bounce and twist.
Steppers just coming through town. They said that them a bad boy, but them can't show me down. Because them humble, them can't take for high ground. Separate the
Reaching out to my brethren self. I self divine. The MC's MC, you know. And nothing more joyful than hear a man spaz out on the mic. A man or a woman, you know, a master of the craft.
just coming through town. Them said that them a bad boy, but them can't show me down. Because them humble, them can't take for high ground. Separate the boys who bring the earth mighty pound. In these heritage days, it's different from the days of old. These generations of vipers are moving out of control. From the leader, we have to take one result. Yeah, we have been on them loose argument. That's not serious. And we not take no check. Check with box. Why, man, we stepping on your chest. Here, Rastafari and make progress. Stop from living your life in a mess. And Professor Horace Campbell. Self-reliance is the best. As a soldier, we have to defend we own. We never find them never run, but get come patrol because we're caught.
You know, one of the reasons I play Peter Tosh, though, you know, one thing lead to another. Not just was he was singing of that time, in that time, and providing a soundtrack to the evolution. When we talk about the Rodney riots, it's widely known now that Peter Tosh became politicized during them same rally riots, and he was said to have commandeered a bus during that time to help the students come forward to the front line, you know. Peter Tosh, the Bush doctor. Big up Ross, ESP McPherson in his ancestral station. One of our elders who shared this information with us many years ago. Our brother Wally, as they call him. Who would go into the places where even most Jamaican politicians wouldn't go. Even most Jamaican teachers wouldn't go. And sit in with the Rastafari. And we know for a fact that this was not in vain because we see the energy of the youth. Sometimes the energy skip a generation, you know. It's just one of those things that's a part of life. But it's all about the youth every time.
Now take no check. Check with box. Boy, man, we stepping on your chest. Give Rastafari and give progress. Stop from living your life in the But I want to tell you what that same report also said. And said that also made us very dangerous. And that's it. They give all kinds of reasons and excuses, some of them credible, some utter rubbish. There's an interesting one that we saw very recently in a secret report of the State Department. I want to tell you about that one, so you can reflect on that one. That secret report made this point, that Grenada is different to Cuba and Nicaragua. And the Grenada Revolution is in one sense even worse, using their language, than the Cuban and Nicaraguan revolutions, because the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada speaks English and therefore can communicate directly to the people of the United States. That's what the
I want to give you a rhythm. I want to give you a rhythm. Huh? That's how I want to give you a rhythm. Spit on. Huh? Whatever. Let's give the people some food.
But I want to tell you what that same report also said. And said that also made us very dangerous. And that is that the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada are predominantly black. They understand that 95% of our population is black, and they had a correct statistic. And if we have 95% of predominantly African origin in our country, then we can have a dangerous appeal to 30 million black people in the world. This is what I see.
Long live the Grenada Revolution. And we're not just talking about the speech, them study what they were able to accomplish in such a short time. In my world, looking to establish food sovereignty for the people of the planet, reestablish, return to our birthright. Grenada Revolution gives me great inspiration. And one of the things that they spoke about after the revolution, when the people who were not murdered were able to share some of their best practices, Shaka. One of them, what they talked about is they had to deliberately go in and offset, debunk the colonial narrative, which made it that it was favorable and something to look up to, something to aspire to eat imported foods and to forsake the food grown in your own land. So rich Grenada, just like Jamaica, Puerto Rico, all these places, you're supposed to grow roses and export them to Europe and import cabbage from Miami and chocolate.
Central banking
model. Madness.
Yes.
And they were very clear about the fact that this is something they had to do. So, we a lot of time we glorify, well, yeah, man, this happened. Because I speak all the time about the fact that my father used to go and visit Grenada. And in the days when Guyana was at that time in a food crisis. And he would bring forward, I always remember he would bring these juices back. And that was so profound to me that this country produced their own juice, canned juice, you know? You know what I'm saying? Just something simple, but there was a lot of work that was put in behind the scenes to make this happen. So we give thanks for the Grenada Revolution. We give thanks for those examples. I will put on a rhythm though, because it's not just every day we get to see our brother Shaka in the building. Yes, ladies and gentle people.
Yes.
This is good over evil.
Good over evil. Yes. Yes. The things that I'm fighting for, I won't live to see. It don't matter, still ride till my people free, to the nth degree, till I can't breathe, till the earth stops spinning or the soul freeze. If a slice want the whole piece, tentacles couldn't hold me. Insulate how I hold heat. Coming up, it was no peace. In the streets, police was the known beast. Survived the crack in the Reagan era. What a reign of terror. Feeling cracked like a cursed mirror. All black like it's mascara. Cover up all lies, try to mascara. Cinematic graphic, tragic. Like a toddler tossed in traffic. Like an asthmatic collapsing. Adapting, adapt like method acting. This is what I'm here for. Criminals, hustlers, outlaws. Trying to live more. Changing the game where you been lost. Been through hell and back. Stopping your track like cardiac. Yeah. We can't fade the black. We trying to live where them angels at. Yeah. Rouse Coffee.
Ooh, wee.
Light work, light work.
My brother Shaka. My brother Shaka.
Yes.
Barnhead rocker.
Yes.
Tell you in a minute about the 7 chakra from the crown to the root, and big up the youth. Even our roots to fruit, Queen Taiska, you're doing up the work in real time. This is Rascofi, and it's my divine pleasure to speak up on the mic line. We're giving thanks and the praise for divine design. No more dreadful days. Bring up some awful days. Bring up from pranks and praise. Yeah. No more dreadful days. Bring up some joyful days. And let the children play. Let the children play all day. I tell you, I met a sister named Linda Black Elk from your area. I met her over in Italy. Big up yourself, Linda Black Elk and the family. And she has this restaurant. And you told me about the restaurant. You know, you were a witness to it. She told us about the restaurant that they only sell pre-colonial food.
Correct.
And from what you said, there's a waiting list for it.
It's a waiting list. Yeah.
And see, the popular narrative would be like, well, that's not even something. That's just an alternative culture. It's a waiting list.
Bison, greens, berries, like no dairy, nothing. Like if it wasn't here,
right?
It's not here.
It's not there.